The sharp crack of a rifle shot rang out across the valley, causing Katherine Anderson to jolt upright in her bed, her heart hammering against her ribcage. Dawn had barely broken over the rolling hills of southern Arizona territory, and already trouble was brewing in Oro Blanco. It wasn't unusual to hear gunfire in these parts, especially in 1885, when law and order were still tenuous concepts at best. But something about this particular shot sent a chill down Katherine's spine. She pushed back the thin cotton sheets and moved quickly to the window of her modest ranch house, peering out at the horizon where the first golden rays of sunlight were just beginning to illuminate her struggling property. Her eyes immediately sought out the corral where her most precious possession grazed peacefully, seemingly unperturbed by the gunshot. "Thank God," she whispered, relief washing over her as she watched Tempest, her magnificent Palomino stallion, toss his golden mane in the early morning light. The horse had been her father's final gift to her before consumption had claimed him 3 years ago, leaving Katherine alone to manage their small ranch at the tender age of 19. Now 22, Katherine had fought tooth and nail to keep the Anderson homestead running, but a devastating drought had ravaged Oro Blanco for nearly a year, leaving her pastures barren and her cattle thin. The nearby creek that had once provided ample water for her livestock had dwindled to a pitiful trickle, and Katherine knew that without rain soon, everything her father had built would be lost. Another shot echoed across the valley, closer this time, followed by the distant sound of hoofbeats. Katherine quickly threw on a faded blue dress, her fingers fumbling with the buttons as she hurried to see who was approaching her property at such an early hour. She grabbed her father's old shotgun from beside the door more out of habit than any real intention to use it. The rider appeared over the rise, silhouetted against the morning sun. Even at a distance, Katherine recognized the imposing figure of Jasper Green, the banker from town who held the note on her property. His horse kicked up dust as he rode toward her house, and Katherine steeled herself for whatever unpleasantness awaited. "Miss Anderson," Green called out as he dismounted, his voice carrying a false pleasantness that made Katherine's skin crawl. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" Katherine remained on her porch, the shotgun held loosely at her side. "Mr. Green, I wasn't expecting you." The banker removed his hat, revealing a receding hairline slick with sweat despite the early hour. "I'm afraid this isn't a social call, Miss Anderson. I've come to discuss your outstanding debt." Katherine's grip tightened on the shotgun. "I've told you, Mr. Green, I'll have your money when the rains come. My cattle will fetch a fair price once they've had proper grazing." Green's thin lips curled into what he probably thought was a sympathetic smile. "The bank can't survive on promises of rain, my dear. Your payment is 3 months overdue, and my superiors in Tucson are growing impatient." "I just need a little more time," Katherine said, hating the pleading note that had crept into her voice. "Time is a luxury you can no longer afford." Green's eyes drifted past her to the corral where Tempest stood watching them, his golden coat gleaming in the morning sun. "That's a fine horse you have there. Must be worth a pretty penny." Katherine felt her blood run cold. "Tempest isn't for sale." "Everything has a price, Miss Anderson," Green said, placing his hat back on his head. "And I believe that magnificent animal might just be enough to cover your debt and give you a fresh start. Think about it, you could keep your land and have a chance to rebuild once the drought breaks." "My father gave me that horse," Katherine said, her voice tight with emotion. "He's not just livestock, Mr. Green." The banker shrugged, his indifference clear. "Sentiment is a poor substitute for financial stability, Miss Anderson. I'll give you 3 days to decide. Either you sell the horse to cover your debt, or I'll be forced to initiate foreclosure proceedings on your entire property." He mounted his horse with surprising agility for a man of his girth. "Good day to you." As Green rode away, Katherine sank to her knees on the porch, the shotgun clattering to the weathered boards beside her. Tears blurred her vision as she looked out at Tempest, the horse that had been her only true companion since her father's death. The thought of selling him was unbearable, but the alternative, losing everything her father had worked for, seemed equally impossible. A movement at the edge of her property caught her eye. A stranger on horseback sat watching from atop a ridge, his face obscured by the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat. For a moment, their eyes seemed to meet across the distance, and then he was gone, disappearing as suddenly as he had appeared. Katherine wiped her tears away, wondering who the mysterious rider could be. Oro Blanco had seen an influx of drifters lately, most headed for the silver mines that had opened up near the Mexican border. She had no time to worry about strangers, though. She had 3 days to come up with a solution to her impossible situation, 3 days to decide whether to sell her heart or lose her home. The next morning, Katherine rode Tempest into town, determined to find another way out of her predicament. Oro Blanco was little more than a dusty main street lined with false-fronted buildings, a general store, a saloon, a small hotel, and the bank where Jasper Green presided over the financial fate of everyone in the area. She tied Tempest outside the general store, patting his muscular neck before stepping inside. The bell above the door announced her arrival, and Mrs. Hollister, the proprietor's wife, looked up from where she was arranging fabric bolts. "Katherine, dear, what brings you to town today?" The older woman's kind face crinkled with concern as she took in Katherine's tired appearance. "I need work, Mrs. Hollister," Katherine said plainly. "Anything at all. I can clean, sew, cook, whatever needs doing." Mrs. Hollister's expression grew sympathetic. "Oh, my dear, I wish I could help, but with the drought, everyone's cutting back. The miners aren't spending like they used to, and Mr. Hollister has already had to let go of our stock boy." Katherine nodded, having expected as much but needing to try anyway. "Is there anyone in town who might need help?" Mrs. Hollister lowered her voice. "Well, I did hear that the new owner of the Silver Dollar Saloon is looking for girls to serve drinks." She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable with suggesting such work to a respectable young woman like Katherine. "Thank you, Mrs. Hollister," Katherine said, managing a small smile. "I'll keep looking." As she stepped back onto the boardwalk, Katherine's eyes were drawn to a commotion further down the street. A crowd had gathered outside the livery stable, where a man was attempting to break a wild Mustang. The horse, a powerful black stallion, bucked and reared while the man held on grimly, his lean body moving in rhythm with the animal's desperate attempts to dislodge him. Despite her troubles, Katherine found herself moving closer, drawn by the magnificent display of horsemanship. She knew enough about breaking horses to recognize that this man had exceptional skill. He wasn't brutally forcing the animal into submission as many would. Instead, he seemed to be communicating with it, anticipating its moves, working with its natural instincts rather than against them. After several breathtaking minutes, the black horse finally settled, snorting and trembling but no longer fighting. The crowd broke into applause as the rider dismounted with fluid grace. He patted the Mustang's sweaty neck and murmured something in its ear that made the animal's ears flick forward attentively. Only then did Katherine get a clear look at the man's face. He was perhaps in his late 20s, with a strong jaw darkened by stubble and eyes the color of a summer sky. His dark hair curled slightly where it escaped from beneath his hat, and when he smiled at something someone in the crowd said, Katherine felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. "That's Samuel Tucker," Mrs. Hollister said, having followed Katherine from the store. "Arrived in Oro Blanco about a month ago. They say he's got away with horses like nothing anyone's ever seen." "He's certainly skilled," Katherine agreed, watching as Tucker led the now docile Mustang in a circle, demonstrating to its owner how to maintain control. "Word is he's looking to start a horse ranch somewhere in the territory," Mrs. Hollister continued. "Been taking odd jobs breaking horses and working at the livery to save up money." An idea began to form in Katherine's mind. If this man was as good with horses as he appeared to be, perhaps he could give her some advice on how to increase Tempest's value. If she had to sell her beloved horse, she wanted to ensure he would fetch the highest possible price. As the crowd dispersed, Katherine approached Samuel Tucker, who was now rubbing down the Mustang with a handful of straw. "That was impressive work," she said, stopping a respectful distance from the still nervous horse. Tucker looked up, and Katherine was momentarily taken aback by the intensity of his blue eyes. Up close, she could see a small scar that cut through his right eyebrow, and the sun-weathered quality of his skin that spoke of years spent outdoors. "Thank you, madam," he replied, his voice carrying a slight Texas drawl. "Just teaching this fella some manners is all." "You have a gift," Katherine said sincerely. "I've never seen someone connect with a wild horse so quickly." Tucker shrugged modestly, but she could tell he appreciated the compliment. "Horses are honest creatures. They know when you respect them." His gaze shifted past her to where Tempest stood tied to the hitching rail outside the general store. "Speaking of magnificent animals, is that Palomino yours?" Katherine nodded, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "Yes, that's Tempest." Tucker let out a low whistle. "Fine bloodlines. Arabian mixed with something else, I'd guess." "My father bred him from an Arabian mare and a Spanish Mustang," Katherine confirmed, impressed by his eye for horseflesh. "Mr. Tucker, I wonder if I might ask your professional opinion on something?" "Sam, please," he corrected with a smile that created a dimple in his left cheek. "And I'd be happy to help if I can, miss." "Anderson, Katherine Anderson." She hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "I find myself in the unfortunate position of having to sell Tempest. I'd like to know what you think he might be worth, and if there's anything I could do to increase his value." A flicker of surprise crossed Sam's face. "That's a shame. A horse like that doesn't come along often." He handed the Mustang's reins to the livery boy and wiped his hands on a rag tucked into his belt. "Mind if I take a closer look at him?" They walked together to where Tempest waited patiently. The Palomino whickered softly as they approached, stretching his neck toward Katherine. She stroked his velvety muzzle, fighting back the emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. Sam approached Tempest slowly, speaking in low, soothing tones. The horse regarded him with intelligent eyes, then allowed the stranger to run expert hands down his legs, checking his conformation and muscle tone. "He's magnificent," Sam said after a thorough examination. "Pure gold, this one. Well trained too, I can tell." "Responds to the slightest cue, doesn't he?" Katherine nodded, throat tight. "He's the smartest horse I've ever known." "Mind if I ask why you're selling him?" Sam's question was gentle, without judgment. Katherine hesitated, reluctant to reveal her financial troubles to a stranger. But something about Sam's direct gaze encouraged honesty. "The drought has hit my ranch hard. I owe the bank, and Mr. Green has suggested that selling Tempest would cover my debt and allow me to keep my land until conditions improve." Sam's expression darkened at the mention of the banker's name. "Jasper Green has a reputation for acquiring property by any means necessary. You might want to be careful in your dealings with him." "I don't have much choice," Katherine admitted. It's either sell Tempest or lose my father's ranch. Sam was quiet for a moment, studying Tempest thoughtfully. A horse like this could fetch $300, maybe more from the right buyer. Someone who appreciates quality and isn't just looking for a work animal. The sum was more than Katherine had hoped for, enough to pay her debt to the bank and have a small amount left over to purchase supplies. "Do you know of anyone who might be interested?" she asked, trying to ignore the pain the question caused her. Sam seemed to consider his words carefully. "There might be. I've heard rumors that the Army is looking for good breeding stock for their remount program. They pay fair prices for quality horses." Hope flared briefly in Katherine's chest. "The Army? Where would I find them?" "There's a purchasing agent due to arrive in Tucson next week," Sam said. "But that's a long journey from here, especially in this heat." Katherine's hope deflated. Tucson was at least 3 days' hard ride from Oro Blanco. She couldn't possibly make it there and back before Green's deadline, not with her dwindling supplies. Sam must have read the disappointment on her face. "Listen, I'm heading to the saloon for a meal. Why don't you join me and we can talk more about your options?" Under normal circumstances, Katherine would never have considered entering the Silver Dollar Saloon, much less dining with a man she had just met. But these were desperate times, and Sam Tucker seemed genuinely interested in helping her. "Thank you, Mr. Tucker Sam," she corrected herself. "I'd appreciate that." Inside the saloon, they found a quiet table in the corner, far from the few early drinkers at the bar. The place was relatively clean by frontier standards, with sawdust on the floor and a piano that stood silent in the corner, waiting for the evening crowd. A harried-looking waitress took their order stew and cornbread for both, and Sam insisted on paying, waving away Katherine's protests. "Tell me about your ranch," he said once they were alone, seeming genuinely interested. Katherine found herself describing the Anderson homestead, the modest house her father had built with his own hands, the barn that needed a new roof, the creek that had sustained their cattle, until the drought had reduced it to a trickle. She told him about her father's death and how she had struggled to keep the ranch going on her own. "You've accomplished a lot for someone so young," Sam said, his admiration evident. Katherine shrugged, embarrassed by his praise. "I've done what I had to do. The ranch was my father's dream. I couldn't just let it go." "And now?" Sam asked quietly. Katherine stared into her bowl of stew. "Now I might have to sell the one thing I promised my father I would always keep, just to hold onto the land for a little longer. And even then, there's no guarantee I'll survive if the drought continues." Sam's expression was thoughtful. "What if there was another way, a way for you to keep Tempest and save your ranch?" Katherine looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Before Sam could respond, the saloon doors swung open, and Jasper Green entered, accompanied by 2 well-dressed men Katherine didn't recognize. The banker spotted her immediately, his eyebrows rising in surprise at seeing her in such an establishment. With a smug smile, he made his way toward their table. "Miss Anderson," Green said, his tone dripping with false concern. "This is hardly an appropriate place for a lady of your standing. What would your dear departed father say?" Katherine straightened her spine, refusing to be cowed. "My father would say that my choice of dining establishment is my own business, Mr. Green." Green's smile tightened. "Indeed. Well, I hope you're giving serious consideration to our discussion yesterday. My offer still stands, but I'm afraid time is running short." "I'm aware of the deadline," Katherine said coldly. Green's gaze shifted to Sam, who had remained silent but watchful during the exchange. "Mr. Tucker, I see you've made the acquaintance of our local rancher. I hope you're not filling her head with unrealistic ideas about her situation." "Just enjoying a meal with a new friend," Sam replied easily, though Katherine detected a hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Green nodded, clearly unconvinced. "Well, don't let me interrupt your friendship. Miss Anderson, I'll expect your answer in 2 days' time." With that, he rejoined his companions at a table across the room. "I think I should go," Katherine said quietly, having lost her appetite. Sam nodded, laying coins on the table to cover their meal. "I'll walk you back to your horse." Outside, the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on Oro Blanco's dusty street. Katherine untied Tempest, her movements heavy with the weight of her impossible situation. "Miss Anderson, Katherine," Sam said, his voice low and urgent. "I meant what I said earlier. I believe there might be a way for you to keep both your horse and your land." Katherine turned to him, trying not to let hope cloud her judgment. "How?" "I have some savings," Sam said. "Not a fortune, but enough to cover your debt to the bank. I could loan you the money, interest-free, until the drought breaks and you can repay me." Katherine stared at him in shock. "Why would you do that? You hardly know me." Sam's expression was earnest. "I know enough. I know you're fighting to preserve something important, something your father built. I respect that more than you can imagine." He hesitated, then added, "Besides, I've had my own dealings with men like Green. They prey on people's misfortunes, and I'd hate to see him take advantage of yours." Katherine was speechless. The offer was incredibly generous, but she had been raised to stand on her own 2 feet. Taking charity, even well-intentioned charity, went against everything she believed in. I don't know what to say," she finally managed. "It's incredibly kind, but I can't accept. I can't put myself in debt to someone else, even someone as seemingly honorable as you." Rather than being offended, Sam nodded as if he had expected this response. "Then let me make you another proposal. Sell Tempest to me." Katherine's heart sank. "You want to buy him?" "Yes, but with a condition," Sam continued. "I'll buy him at a fair price enough to cover your debt and provide you with some operating capital. In return, I'll leave him in your care. You can continue to ride him, work with him, treat him as your own. Consider it a temporary arrangement until you're back on your feet and can buy him back from me." Katherine frowned, trying to understand the offer. "You'd pay me for my horse, but let me keep him," Sam shrugged. "I've been looking for good bloodstock for my future ranch. Tempest would be an investment for me, one I'm happy to let appreciate in value while remaining in the care of someone who clearly loves him." It sounded too good to be true, and in Katherine's experience, such offers usually were. "Why would you do this for me? What's in it for you?" Sam's gaze was steady, his blue eyes reflecting the cloudless Arizona sky. "Let's just say I believe in helping where I can. The West is hard enough without good people losing everything they care about." Katherine studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. She found none, only an open honesty that was rare in her experience. Still, she hesitated. "I'll need to think about it." "Of course," Sam agreed readily. "You have 2 days before Green's deadline. I'm staying at the livery. You can find me there when you decide." He tipped his hat to her and turned to go, then paused. "Katherine, whatever you decide, don't sell to Green. A man like that won't treat Tempest with the respect he deserves." With that, he walked away, leaving Katherine to mount Tempest and begin the ride home, her mind whirling with the unexpected encounter and Sam Tucker's extraordinary offer. That night, Katherine barely slept. She lay awake in her father's old rocking chair on the porch, watching the stars wheel across the vast Arizona sky, weighing her options. In the corral, Tempest's pale coat gleamed like a ghost in the moonlight. Samuel Tucker's proposition was unusual but not without merit. If she sold Tempest to him but continued to care for the horse, she could satisfy the bank while essentially keeping her beloved companion. But could she trust a man she had just met? No matter how honest he seemed, morning came with no clear answer. Katherine went about her chores, mechanically feeding the few chickens that remained, checking on her thin cattle, drawing water from the well that, thankfully, had not yet run dry. Throughout it all, her mind continued to circle around Sam's offer and the approaching deadline. By midday, the heat had become unbearable. Katherine retreated to the shade of the porch, fanning herself with an old newspaper. She was startled from her thoughts by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. For a moment, she feared it might be Green returning early to pressure her. But instead, she saw a familiar tall figure atop a bay gelding. Samuel Tucker rode up to her house, looking as if he belonged in this landscape of rocks and scrub brush. He dismounted smoothly, removing his hat as he approached the porch. "Miss Anderson," he greeted her, "I hope I'm not intruding." Katherine gestured to the empty chair beside her. "Not at all. Would you like some water? It's cool from the well." "Much obliged," Sam said, taking the offered seat while Katherine fetched a dipper of water from the bucket she kept in the shade. After he had drunk deeply, Sam set the dipper aside and looked out at her property. "You've got good land here. Once the rains return, it'll flourish again." "If the rains return," Katherine corrected softly. "Some folks in town say this drought could last years." "They're wrong," Sam said with quiet certainty. "I've seen the signs. The weather's shifting. By fall you'll have rain." Katherine wished she could share his confidence. "What brings you out here, Mr. Tucker?" Sam turned to face her directly. "I wanted to make sure you understood my offer, and I thought you might have questions." Katherine had indeed spent most of the night thinking of questions. "Why are you really doing this? The truth, please." Sam's expression grew serious. "The truth is, I've been where you are. My family had a small horse ranch outside of San Antonio. When my father died, we fell on hard times. A banker like Green swooped in, offering help that was nothing more than a trap designed to take our land." His jaw tightened at the memory. "My mother had to sell everything, including my father's prized stallion, a horse that meant as much to me as Tempest clearly means to you." "I'm sorry," Katherine said softly, understanding now the source of his compassion. Sam nodded, accepting her sympathy. "I swore that, if I ever had the chance to prevent someone else from experiencing that kind of loss, I would. That's my true motivation, Katherine. Nothing more complicated than that." His sincerity was palpable, and Katherine found herself believing him. "If I accept your offer, what exactly would the arrangement be?" "I'll pay you $300 for Tempest," Sam said. "That should cover your debt to the bank and leave you with something to live on until conditions improve. We'll draw up a simple contract giving you the right to buy him back for the same amount within a year." "And in the meantime," Katherine pressed, "in the meantime, he stays right here with you. The only difference will be that the paper saying he belongs to me rather than you." Katherine considered this. "And if something happens, if he gets sick or injured, then we deal with it together," Sam said simply. "I trust your judgment when it comes to his care." It was a fair offer, more than fair, yet something still held Katherine back. "Why not just loan me the money as you first suggested?" Sam's smile was understanding. "Because I know the kind of woman you are, Katherine Anderson. You're proud, independent, and unwilling to take charity. This way, it's a business arrangement, one that benefits us both." Katherine couldn't deny the truth of his assessment. The idea of a loan had made her uncomfortable, but a sale with the option to repurchase felt different, more dignified somehow. "I'd need the money tomorrow," she said, making her decision. "Green expects my answer, and I'd rather pay him in full than simply tell him I've sold Tempest to someone else." "I'll bring it first thing in the morning," Sam promised, rising to leave. "And Katherine, you're making the right choice." As she watched him ride away, Katherine felt a strange mixture of relief and trepidation. She was placing an enormous amount of trust in a man she barely knew, yet something in her heart told her Samuel Tucker would keep his word. The next day dawned clear and hot, like every day before it. Katherine rose early, preparing herself for the momentous transaction ahead. She had spent the evening drafting a simple contract, as Sam had suggested, outlining the terms of their arrangement. Tempest would legally belong to Samuel Tucker, but would remain in her care with the right to repurchase him within 1 year for the original sale price. Sam arrived as promised, just as the sun was clearing the eastern hills. He dismounted, carrying a leather pouch that clinked with the sound of coins. $300 as agreed, he said, handing it to Katherine. The pouch was surprisingly heavy in her hands, the weight of her debt, the weight of Tempest's worth, the weight of trust being placed in a stranger. They sat at her kitchen table to sign the contract. Katherine had made 2 copies, one for each of them. Sam read through the document carefully before signing both copies with a steady hand. "It's done," he said, passing one copy back to her. "Tempest is officially mine, but he stays here with you." Katherine felt a curious mix of emotions: relief that her debt would be paid, sadness at technically losing ownership of her beloved horse, and gratitude for Sam's unusual generosity. "Thank you," she said simply. "I don't know many men who would do this for a stranger." Sam's smile was warm. "We're not exactly strangers anymore, are we, Katherine?" There was a truth to his words that Katherine couldn't deny. In the brief time since they'd met, she had come to see Sam as someone she could trust, a rare quality in the often harsh reality of frontier life. "I should get to town," she said, tucking the money and contract into her dress pocket. "Green will be expecting me, and I'd rather get this over with." "I'll ride with you," Sam offered. "If that's all right." Katherine nodded, grateful for the company. They saddled their horses in companionable silence, Katherine on Tempest, who seemed to sense the importance of the day, standing unusually still as she tightened his girth. The ride to Oro Blanco took less than an hour. As they approached the town, Katherine felt a surge of confidence. She would walk into that bank not as a desperate woman selling her most prized possession, but as a rancher paying her debt in full. Green's face when they entered the bank together was a study in surprise and suspicion. His eyes darted between Katherine and Sam, clearly trying to understand their relationship and what it might mean for his plans. "Miss Anderson," he greeted her, his tone carefully neutral. "I see you've brought Mr. Tucker with you. Have you reached a decision about our discussion?" Katherine placed the pouch of coins on Green's desk, enjoying the solid thunk it made against the polished wood. "I have, Mr. Green. I'm here to pay my debt in full." Green's eyebrows rose as he pulled the pouch toward him and counted the coins. $300 exactly, he confirmed, his tone betraying his disappointment. "May I ask how you managed to secure such a sum so quickly?" "You may ask," Katherine replied coolly, "but my financial arrangements are my own business, just as you've always insisted yours are." Green's lips pressed into a thin line as he wrote out a receipt for the payment. "Well, Miss Anderson, it appears you've managed to keep your ranch for now. But remember, there will be another payment due at the harvest and without rain." He let the implication hang in the air. "I'll worry about that when the time comes," Katherine said, taking the receipt and folding it carefully. "Good day, Mr. Green." Outside the bank, Katherine let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That felt good," she admitted to Sam, who had remained a silent, supportive presence throughout the exchange. "Green didn't look happy to be paid off," Sam observed. "I suspect he was counting on foreclosing on your property." "Well, he'll have to set his sights elsewhere," Katherine said firmly. Thanks to you. Sam shook his head. I just provided the means. You're the one with the courage to fight for what matters to you. They mounted their horses and rode slowly down Oro Blanco's main street. For the first time in months, Katherine felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. She had time to rebuild, to strengthen her herd, to prepare for the next challenge. What will you do now? She asked Sam as they reached the edge of town. I've been offered steady work at the livery, he replied. The owner's getting on in years and needs help with the more spirited horses. I thought I'd take him up on it, at least for a while. Katherine felt an unexpected rush of pleasure at the news that Sam would be staying in Oro Blanco. That sounds like a good opportunity. It is, Sam agreed, and it means I'll be able to check on my investment from time to time. He smiled, making it clear he was referring to Tempest. You're welcome at the ranch anytime, Katherine found herself saying. Tempest is yours now, after all. The words still felt strange in her mouth, but the sting of them was lessened by the knowledge that her beloved horse would remain with her, at least for now. As they parted ways at the crossroads, Sam heading back to town, Katherine to her ranch, she couldn't help but feel that her life had changed in ways that went beyond the simple transaction they had completed. Samuel Tucker had entered her world like an unexpected rain shower in the midst of drought, bringing hope when she had all but given up. The summer heat intensified as July gave way to August, but true to Sam's prediction, the weather began to show subtle signs of change. Cloud formations appeared more frequently on the horizon, though they still refused to release their precious moisture on the parched land below. Sam became a regular visitor at the Anderson ranch, riding out several times a week to check on Tempest and lend a hand with the more demanding chores. Katherine found herself looking forward to these visits, planning her days around them, preparing extra food for their shared meals. They fell into an easy friendship, working side by side to repair fences, mend the leaking roof on the barn, and care for her remaining livestock. Sam proved himself to be not only skilled with horses, but knowledgeable about ranching in general, offering practical suggestions that made Katherine's limited resources stretch further. My father would have liked you, she told him one evening as they sat on her porch, watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson. He always said you could judge a man by how he treats animals and how willingly he works. Sam smiled, his profile strong against the fading light. I wish I could have met him. He raised a remarkable daughter. The compliment brought a flush to Katherine's cheeks that had nothing to do with the lingering heat of the day. She was becoming increasingly aware of Sam as a man, the strength in his hands as they worked together, the kindness in his eyes when he spoke to her, the easy grace of his movements as he rode alongside her across her property. Tell me about your plans, she said, changing the subject from herself. You mentioned wanting to start a horse ranch. Sam leaned back in his chair, stretching his long legs out before him. That's the dream. I've been saving for years, working ranches from Texas to Colorado, breaking horses, driving cattle, whatever paid. I'm looking for the right piece of land, somewhere with good water and grass, not too far from a growing town where there'll be a market for quality horses. Have you looked around here? Katherine asked, surprising herself with the question. Sam's gaze met hers, something warm and considering in his eyes. I have, actually. There's a parcel about 5 miles west of your place that shows promise. The Wilkins property. Old man Wilkins died last winter, and his son has no interest in ranching. It's been sitting empty. Katherine knew the land he meant, good bottomland with a spring that fed into the same creek that ran through her property. That's fine country, she agreed. But can you afford it on a livery hand's wages? Sam chuckled. I've got savings from before I came to Oro Blanco. Not enough for a grand operation, but enough to make a start. The livery work is just to keep me going while I make arrangements." Katherine nodded, trying to ignore the small pang she felt at the thought of Sam establishing himself so close by, yet separate from her own struggling ranch. She had grown accustomed to his presence, his help, his companionship. The idea of him focusing his attentions elsewhere left her feeling strangely bereft. "You've gone quiet," Sam observed, his voice gentle in the gathering dusk. Katherine shook her head, embarrassed by her selfish thoughts. "Just thinking about the future. It's hard to plan when so much depends on the weather." Sam's expression grew serious. "Katherine, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you, something that might help us both." The way he said "us" sent a flutter through Katherine's chest. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about our arrangement regarding Tempest," Sam began cautiously, "and about my plans for the Wilkins place if I can secure it." Katherine tensed, suddenly afraid he was going to tell her he needed to take Tempest away after all. "Go on. What would you think about combining our efforts?" Sam's eyes held hers steadily. "Your knowledge of cattle, my experience with horses, your established homestead, my capital. We could create something stronger together than either of us could manage alone." Katherine stared at him, trying to understand exactly what he was proposing. "Are you suggesting a business partnership?" Sam hesitated, then nodded. "For a start, yes. I respect what you've built here, Katherine, and I believe in its potential. With the right investment and some diversification, raising horses alongside your cattle, this ranch could not only survive but thrive." It was a practical suggestion, one that made good business sense. Yet Katherine sensed there was more to Sam's proposal than simple economics. "And Tempest?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Would be ours," Sam replied simply. "No more contracts, no repayment necessary. Just ours, like everything else we would build together." The implication hung in the air between them, as tangible as the scent of dust and sage that filled the evening. Katherine's heart raced as she realized what Sam might really be suggesting. "Sam," she began carefully, "are you proposing a business partnership or something more?" Sam took a deep breath, as if gathering his courage. "I came to Oro Blanco looking for land, for a place to build my future. I never expected to find someone like you, someone with your strength, your determination, your heart." He leaned forward, his expression earnest in the fading light. "I'm proposing whatever you're willing to consider, Katherine. I know it hasn't been long, but I believe there's something between us worth exploring, if you feel it too." Katherine's breath caught in her throat. She had been so focused on survival, on keeping her father's dream alive, that she had scarcely allowed herself to acknowledge the growing feelings she had for Samuel Tucker. Yet they were undeniably there in the way her pulse quickened when she saw him riding toward her ranch, in the comfort she found in his presence, in the empty feeling that settled over the house after he left. "I do feel it," she admitted softly. "But I'm afraid, Sam. I've been on my own for so long, fighting for every inch of ground. The idea of relying on someone else, of sharing this burden, is terrifying," Sam finished for her. "I know. But maybe that's the point, Katherine. Maybe we're not meant to face everything alone." He reached across the space between them, his hand open in invitation. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Just think about it, about the possibilities." Katherine placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses that matched her own hands that had worked hard, that understood the life she led. "I will," she promised. They sat in companionable silence as darkness fell completely, the first stars appearing in the vast Arizona sky. When Sam finally rose to leave, Katherine walked him to where his horse was tethered, her mind still spinning with the conversation they'd had. "I'll be back day after tomorrow," Sam said as he mounted. Unless you'd rather have more time to consider things. Katherine shook her head. No, come as you planned. Whatever my answer, I value your help and your company. Sam's smile was visible even in the dim starlight. Good night, Katherine. Sleep well. As she watched him ride away, Katherine knew that sleep would be elusive that night. She had a decision to make, perhaps the most important one since her father's death had thrust the responsibility of the ranch onto her young shoulders. But this time, the decision wasn't about survival. It was about the kind of future she wanted to build. The next day, Katherine went about her chores with mechanical efficiency, her mind elsewhere. She found herself walking the boundaries of her property, seeing it through new eyes, not just as her father's legacy, but as the foundation for something that could grow and change with proper care and investment. She thought about Sam's suggestion of raising horses alongside her cattle, diversifying to protect against the vagaries of weather and markets. It was sound thinking, especially with his expertise in horseflesh. Together, they could build something more resilient than either could manage alone. But was that all she wanted? A business partnership, a practical arrangement? The question followed her throughout the day, demanding an honest answer. By evening, storm clouds had gathered on the western horizon, dark, towering formations that promised rain but might deliver nothing more than wind and lightning. Katherine sat on her porch watching them, reminded of Sam's prediction that the weather was changing. The sound of approaching hooves startled her. Sam wasn't due until tomorrow, and she rarely had other visitors, especially so late in the day. She reached for her shotgun out of habit, then relaxed when she recognized the rider. "You're early," she called as Sam dismounted. "Couldn't stay away," he replied with a smile that made her heart skip. "And I wanted to beat the storm. Looks like it might be a big one." Katherine glanced at the darkening sky. "We've had false promises before." "Not this time," Sam said with certainty. "Feel the air, the pressure's dropping." "We're going to get rain tonight, Katherine. Real rain." His excitement was contagious. Katherine found herself smiling, allowing hope to creep back into her heart after so many months of disappointment. "I'll believe it when I feel it," she said, but without her usual skepticism. Sam led his horse to the shelter of her barn, then joined her on the porch. They sat together, watching the clouds build and darken as twilight deepened into night. The air grew heavy with anticipation, the scent of dust giving way to something fresher, the unmistakable smell of approaching rain. "Sam," Katherine said finally, breaking the comfortable silence between them, "I've been thinking about your proposal." He turned toward her, his face serious in the dim light. "And the business part makes sense," she began carefully. "Combining our resources, our knowledge, it's a sound plan." Sam nodded, waiting for her to continue, something cautious in his expression. "But that's not all I want," Katherine admitted, her voice barely audible above the distant rumble of thunder. "I want," she broke off, finding it difficult to put her feelings into words after so long of keeping them bottled inside. Sam reached for her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "What do you want, Katherine?" The first fat drops of rain began to fall, pattering on the porch roof above them. Katherine looked up in wonder, then back at Sam, seeing the same amazement reflected in his eyes. "I want a partner," she said finally. "In every sense of the word. I want someone to share the good days and the bad, someone who understands this life and loves it as much as I do." She took a deep breath. "I want you, Sam, if that's truly what you're offering." The rain was falling steadily now, a blessed curtain of moisture soaking into the parched earth. Sam stood, pulling Katherine to her feet and drawing her toward the edge of the porch where the rain was visible in the faint light from the house windows. "That's exactly what I'm offering," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "A true partnership, Katherine. In business, in life, in everything that matters. His hands framed her face gently. I think I've been looking for you my whole life, even when I didn't know it. The sincerity in his voice, in his eyes, broke through the last of Catherine's reservations. She had known this man for only a short time, yet she felt as if she had always known him, as if he were a part of her that had been missing until now. Yes, she whispered, just as the heavens truly opened, sending sheets of rain cascading from the sky. Yes to everything, Sam. His kiss was as gentle as his hands, a promise rather than a demand. Katherine returned it with all the emotion she had kept locked away for so long, the loneliness, the fear, the hope, and now the joy of finding someone who truly understood her. They stood at the edge of the porch, the cool rain misting around them, clinging to their hair and clothes, neither willing to break the moment. When they finally parted, Sam's smile was as bright as Katherine had ever seen it. "Should we go out in it?" he asked, nodding toward the downpour. "Proper ranchers ought to get soaked by the first real rain after a drought." Katherine laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Is that a Texas tradition?" "It is now," Sam declared, taking her hand and leading her down the porch steps into the rain. The water was cool against their skin, soaking through their clothes in seconds. Katherine tilted her face to the sky, letting the rain wash away the dust and worry of the long, dry months. Beside her, Sam did the same, his expression one of pure joy. "Listen," he shouted above the drumming of the rain. "Can you hear it?" Katherine strained her ears and caught the sound, a rushing, gurgling noise coming from the direction of the creek bed that had been dry for so long. "The creek! It's flowing again!" Hand in hand, they ran through the mud toward the sound, slipping and laughing like children. When they reached the creek bank, they saw what had been a dusty trickle transformed into a vigorous stream, water rushing over rocks that had been exposed for months. "It's a sign," Sam said, pulling Katherine close against the chill that was setting in now that they were thoroughly soaked. "A new beginning." In the corral nearby, Tempest whinnied as if in agreement. The palomino had sought shelter beneath the lean-to, but now he ventured out, tossing his golden mane as the rain plastered it to his neck. "Look at him," Katherine said, leaning into Sam's embrace. "He knows things are changing." "For the better," Sam assured her, pressing a kiss to her rain-slicked hair. "This is just the start, Katherine. For the land, for us, for everything we'll build together." As they stood watching the creek rise, Tempest approached the fence, stretching his neck toward them. Katherine reached out to stroke his wet muzzle, her other arm still around Sam. "Our horse," she said, testing the words, finding she liked the sound of them. "The first of many, I hope." "The first of many," Sam agreed, "though none will ever be quite as special." They remained by the creek until the chill became too much to bear, then returned to the warmth of the house. Sam built up the fire while Katherine found dry clothes, one of her father's old shirts, and a pair of trousers for Sam, which fit him surprisingly well. As they sat before the fire, drinking coffee laced with a precious spoonful of whiskey Sam had produced from his saddlebag, they began to plan in earnest. Sam would approach young Wilkins about purchasing the neighboring property, but regardless of that outcome, they would combine their efforts on Katherine's land. "We should make it official," Sam said, setting his empty cup aside. "I mean, if you're certain about this about us." Katherine looked at him in the firelight, this man who had entered her life so unexpectedly and changed it so completely. "I'm certain," she said simply. "Are you?" Sam's answer was to kneel before her chair, taking her hands in his. "Katherine Anderson, will you marry me? Will you be my partner in everything, in ranching, in raising horses, in building a life that would make your father proud?" Katherine felt tears well in her eyes, but they were tears of joy rather than sadness. "Yes, Samuel Tucker. Yes to all of it." Outside, The rain continued to fall steadily, soaking into the parched earth, bringing renewal to the land that had suffered for so long. Inside, by the warmth of the fire, Katherine and Sam sealed their promise with a kiss, a promise of partnership, of shared dreams, of a future built together. 3 weeks later, on a crisp September morning, Katherine Anderson became Katherine Tucker in a simple ceremony performed by the traveling circuit preacher who visited Oro Blanco monthly. The entire town turned out for the occasion, surprised but delighted by the rapid courtship and eager to celebrate any good news after the long drought. Even Jasper Green attended, his congratulations stiff but seemingly sincere. The banker had been noticeably more subdued since the night of the great rainstorm, when lightning had struck his fine house on the hill, causing a fire that destroyed his east wing before the rain extinguished it. Some might call that divine justice, Mrs. Hollister whispered to Katherine during the wedding celebration at the Silver Dollar Saloon, which had been transformed with wildflowers and bunting for the occasion. The good Lord has his own way of balancing the scales. Katherine was too happy to harbor ill will toward anyone, even Green. Her world had been transformed in the span of just a few months from the brink of ruin to the threshold of a new beginning. Sam had successfully purchased the Wilkins property, combining it with Katherine's land to create a substantial ranch with excellent water resources now that the creek flowed strongly again. They had already selected a site for their new home, a larger house that would stand between their two properties, symbolizing the union of their separate lives into one shared future. But for now, they were content in Katherine's father's house, making plans each evening for the ranch they would build together. They had decided to call it the Golden Tee, in honor of Tempest, the golden horse that had brought them together. Tempest himself had pride of place at the wedding, wearing a specially made halter decorated with red ribbons. After the ceremony, Katherine and Sam rode him together back to their ranch, his strong back carrying them both with ease. "He always was meant to be ours," Sam said as they dismounted at the porch of what was now their shared home. "From the moment I saw him in town that day, something told me he was special, that he would lead me to something important." Katherine stroked Tempest's gleaming neck, remembering how close she had come to losing him. "Thank you for bringing him back to me," she said softly. "Even when he was technically yours, you never really took him away." Sam wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her close. "I could never have taken him from you, Katherine. From the beginning, I just wanted to see you both safe and happy." "And now?" she asked, turning in his embrace to face him. "Now," Sam said, his eyes reflecting the deep blue of the Arizona sky, "now I want to build a legacy with you. Something that will last long after we're gone, a ranch known for its fine horses and strong cattle, a place where our children and grandchildren can grow up understanding the value of hard work and the importance of caring for the land." "Children," Katherine repeated, a smile playing at her lips. "You've been making plans without me, Mr. Tucker." Sam laughed, lifting her easily into his arms to carry her across the threshold. "Just dreaming, Mrs. Tucker. But isn't that where all great things begin? With a dream that two people share." As he kissed her, Katherine knew he was right. Their story had begun with a crisis, with the potential loss of something precious. But through trust, courage, and the willingness to believe in each other, they had transformed that moment of desperation into the foundation for a future filled with promise. Outside, Tempest grazed contentedly in the pasture that was green again after the rains. In the distance, the first of what would eventually be many foals frolicked beside its mother, the beginning of the Golden Tee breeding program. The afternoon sun gilded everything in sight, from the newly repaired barn to the creek that bubbled with renewed vigor. "I love you, Samuel Tucker," Katherine whispered against her husband's lips. "Thank you for giving me back everything I thought I had lost and so much more." "I love you too," Sam replied, his arms secure around her. "And this is just the beginning, Katherine, just the beginning of all we'll build together." As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across their land, Katherine knew with absolute certainty that he was right. This was indeed just the beginning of their story, a story of love, perseverance, and the extraordinary journey that had started the day a woman was forced to sell her prized horse, and the cowboy who bought it returned it to her, along with his heart.